done very well in this town of promoting our town. And we need to have an information place where people can stop and find out what is attractive to visit. In fact, one of the main things that we have is Alice Munro, and I don't want to see Alice Munro be moved to somewhere else within the county when she was born and raised here in Wingham. So I'm here to really support the museum going to the train station.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Yes, my friend, speak up.
Reed Bailey and Council. I'm Gord Baxter, Treasurer of the Barn Dance Historical Society. I'm here to talk about the museum. The Barn Dance Historical Society currently maintains a museum across the street to preserve artifacts of the barn dance shows started by CKNX. We feel this is an important part of the history of Wingham. The Barn Dance Historical Society was founded by the late Earl Haywood, worked with Doc Cruikshank at CKNX, and is now managed by a volunteer board of directors. The museum contains artifacts from noted musicians Larry Mercy, Marie Brottrell, Al Cherney, who have all been inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, and many other entertainers. While we are a private museum, and given the current situation of closing the building, we do not have a place to relocate the Barn Dance Museum. Both the Municipal Museum and the Barn Dance Museum have worked together in the past to promote tourism in the municipality and the county. Now is time for change. The board is now faced with a decision whether to close the museum, relocate it, or partner amalgamate with someone else. The question arises whether the municipality is interested in having these artifacts remain in Wingham. The concept presented by Mr. Kuyvenhoven for the train station is very interesting, and with some other further discussion and meetings, we could support the train station, could be supported by the Barn Dance Historical Society. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Further information on that or any other subject? Yep. Doug?
Myself, I see a number of pieces coming together for Wingham. A couple years ago now, we reopened the Town Hall Theater, and it's really a terrific music performance theater. It's now the largest seating capacity of a mid-sized theater in this part of Ontario, and the acoustics are fantastic. It's undergoing a refresh and painting and upgrades right now. And we also, Barn Dance Historic Society is spoken here. There's a strategic plan in the BIA to brand Wingham for music. And so that fits in with that. The availability of the train station for a museum at this time. And in fact, even One Care moving out of the garage at the back of the property, making it available to be moved to join on and add space to the train station to make it a better facility for the museum. So to me, there's just a bunch of stuff that's just fitting into place. The timing is incredible. And so I really, as a person from Wingham, I really think it's a neat opportunity. How do all these pieces fall together at this one particular time? So obviously I'm in support of it as well.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Go ahead, David.
I just wondered, am I speaking for the BIA, so are we deferring that to item 6.1, or do you want me to speak now?
We had you as a delegation because you asked for more than the allotted 2-minute time period. So,
okay.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'm going to move on now to the consent agenda. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopt consent item 5.1.1 to 5.1.5, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives concession items 5.2.1 to 5.2.5 and 5.3 to 5.1 to 5.3.3 for information. Do I have a mover? Trevor and Kevin. questions or comments on all those? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I know it was before our time, but I was curious with property standards. There's one in Belgrave on Queen Street, which are we at liberty to know that, or?
You're talking about something that's going on with property standards?
No, it was, you asked if questions on what we just did, and so this was 5.2.3.
Whoop, I lost.
Is this,
I'm going to get Dwayne to speak to this.
Yeah, or actually Kirk.
Okay, Kirk, we're going to pass it over to Kirk then to speak to this one.
Sure, and that is regarding the Queen Street property
yes,
and
just curious which one it is, what it is, who it is,
what property it
what
is.
property.
It's the North Huron Rec property.
Oh, okay.
You good with that? Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Moving on to public meetings and hearings. David, I believe you're up now.
My name is Dave Tiffin. I'm from Wingham. I'm currently the secretary of the Wingham BIA. Thank you for giving me the time to speak this evening. I want to talk about the possible move of the Wingham Museum to the former train station. Although we probably don't think about it too often, Wingham has a very rich history. The days when CKNX was a true local TV and radio station with live news and programming. Wingham had the tagline of the biggest little radio and television town in Canada. It also has the barn dance, was famous all over southwestern Ontario, and we had Canada's #1 cowboy singer in Earl Haywood. We have a Nobel Prize winning author in Alice Munro, painter George Agnew, and several others, plus just the history of the town's buildings and businesses as they once were. The existing museum building has become unsuitable and costs to repair it are quite high, plus it's not very accessible. The municipality has a unique opportunity of a donated heritage building to house the museum, that being the former train station. But this is only a one-time situation and opportunity. The benefits of the train station we see would be accessibility, parking. It's directly across from the entrance to the walking trail. It's a historical building suitable for a museum. High-speed internet is available through there, and the ability to relocate an existing full-time North Huron employee to that location. My understanding of the plan would be to relocate the museum to the train station as well as a North Huron employee. That employee would continue their usual North Huron duties, but also be able to act as a tourism resource when necessary. We currently have visitors showing up at the town hall and at the complex and at the library, asking for things to do in Wingham and the area. This museum facility would provide a central, single location right on the main street of town. 3 points of a municipality's economic triangle are housing, businesses, and tourism. We currently don't have the housing to support more employees for businesses that might locate here. I know that correcting that is a priority for this council, but it will take some time. Without a museum in Wingham, it puts a big hole in the tourism we currently do have. This relocation would actually enhance our tourism options. The Wingham BIA board fully supports the move and resurgence of the Wingham Museum. When the First Impressions project was done with Walkerton, they noted the museum specifically as a positive focal point of Wingham. There's a possibility of grant funding available to assist with the transition, and the Barn Dance Committee has indicated they may support and assist, as we've just heard. It's the hope of the Wingham BIA, whose role it is to support and attract people to town and our businesses, that this new North Huron Council will get behind and support this initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments for David? Dave, I would just like to point out and ask something. As you know, a lot of us in this room do a lot of volunteering. I believe before my time, there was a study done on this, and I believe we were looking at about a $250,000 transition fee, should this council decide to do anything with it. With the crowd we have here, I'd be more than willing to help any way I could. I would be looking for volunteers to try to reduce that cost. I see a nod there. Thank you very much. We will be coming forward probably at some time and like to create a committee to do that. Maybe not a committee, but understanding that I'm sure most of my council will be more than willing to help, and we would, but it's a hefty price tag. And I do believe that we want to continue with the museum in one way or another. And again, I'm speaking on my behalf. The council will be making the decision. But should we move that way, I would really need some help so we can cut the financial costs down. But thank you very kindly, David. And thank you everybody that spoke out tonight. Is there anyone else that would like to speak about anything? Go ahead,
I'll
Doug.
just add to the point that you made there. Our experience with the Wingham Town Hall Theater,
Mhm.
it closed, and then we had to get behind this project and get people behind it. It actually raised the awareness of the town hall theater, and I think it actually breathed new life into the whole thing, as much as difficult it was. And I think the opportunity is there as well. I think we can be looking to a resurgent, new interest in the museum, and a large number of volunteers that would, step up and make this their museum. Yeah, so I concur.
I do appreciate, thank you for that. And we did the same thing at the local school when the school board couldn't give us a playground. I believe it was, maybe Mr. Sykes can speak to this, $200,000. And it was all done by volunteers from our community. And everybody can use that playground 24/7. It is a beautiful playground. So yes, we have a rich history of volunteers, and that's why I felt so comfortable to reach out to you folks. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you all very kindly. We're going to move on next to reports. Clerk's Department, if there's anything. Finance Department, I think Dawn is knee deep in other things. Recreation and Community, there is nothing. North Huron Museum. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated January 21st, 2019 regarding the North Huron Museum for information purposes. Do I have a mover? So go ahead.
If you wish, Vicky.
Oh, sorry,
That's
Vicky was
okay.
going to speak to it too?
Vicky will speak to it.
Forgive me,
Actually, I believe
forgive me,
she has
Vic.
That's
a Short
okay.
presentation that
Yeah,
she'll.
it's just a short presentation. Just give me a moment to get it. Up and running here. Just a moment, sorry.
No, take
Having a
your
little
time.
bit of technical difficulties today,
No-
so it's
no
been a pretty
problem.
exciting day. There's been lots going on since about 6:30 this morning,
I hear this.
starting at the complex, so. Thank you, Mayor Bailey and members of council. Basically, I've just put together a summary of the information. It's a summary of the information that was provided in your reports. As you know, your reports had a lot of background information with respect to the facility conditions assessment that was conducted in October of 2017, as well as staff reports, and then the presentations that were presented in July and August. So one of the things that we've done tonight is just kind of summarize all of that information, because I know it's quite a bit of reading for you over the weekend and things. So just the highlights, and there is nothing new in here. It's just a summary, but just to highlight, 2017 council directed staff to have that facility condition assessment undertaken. And the facility condition assessment was completed in the fall of 2017, and the assessment determined that North Huron Museum required $3.8 million in upgrades in order for it to meet the AODA requirements, and AODA being Accessibility for Ontarians Disabilities Act. As part of the reports that were presented, decision-making flow chart was put together. to help council kind of break down all the different decisions that needed to be made. So in your packages, you have a copy of this flow chart, which indicates that the first decision that needed to be made was whether or not you were going to renovate the building, or the township was going to renovate the building at a cost of $3.8 million, or close the building and declare it as surplus. Based on the decision-making model, council decided to close the building at this point. So when you're looking at that flow chart, it moves everything over to the right-hand side. So just to highlight, the previous council decided not to proceed with the renovations, and they decided to close the North Huron Museum for the 2018 season. Then going to the right-hand side of the flow chart, then you can see that the next decision was to look at museum programs and basically decide if we're going to discontinue offering museum program or move to a new location. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is making that decision. Once you make that decision, then we can move on in the other areas as identified in the chart. So if you discontinue the program, we've got the accession artifacts and move archives. If you decide to move to a new location, we can expand programming, develop a strategic plan and policies. It's kind of going to depend on the location. But either way, we're going to have to do some deaccessioning because the museum in its current state or capacity has 12,000 artifacts in it. At the time, then staff, in trying to figure out where to go from here, staff were directed to investigate and report back options for museum programs and to identify potential locations for the museum programming should council decide to go that route. Staff did report back with some museum programming options. They did some investigation and found out that, the most successful museums provide rotational exhibits, not just static ones, meaning that there's some kind of changeover to get people or tourists to come back and visit the museum and to support it, get their buy-in. They found that there was cultural programming that was also offered, and so that can be, working with the school children and letting them learn about the local culture and their heritage. It can also be about, you could expand it into, music as well, which supports the BIA and, the history museum or music in the area and musicians and things. So it could be in a number of different ways of supporting cultural interests in the community. Staff also identified several retail sites as well as the old train station as potential sites for museum programming. Those locations were identified in the information provided in your report. As identified, some sites would sites required would be able to accommodate the entire collection next door. Others would require downsizing. At the same time, there was this idea of creating a tourism information / cultural center, and that was being seemed to be favorable amongst the community and some members of council. So one of the sites that seemed to be favorable, especially when talking about the cultural center or a visitor center, was the old train station. The old train station has a lot of character, where the other sites were basically retail storefronts and whatnot. The old train station is a 3,000 square foot facility, excluding the shed area that's out the back, the 3-bay shed. As mentioned earlier, it is accessible. It does have internet Wi-Fi services. And it has that persona that you would want to see in a cultural visitor center. Some important things to consider is that regardless of the option chosen, A deaccessioning of the collection will need to occur. And deaccessioning is going to require some qualified staff to be hired on a 2-year contract basis to develop policies and procedures and undertake that deaccessioning process. They would also be responsible for cataloging and deaccessioning archival material as well. So the museum has artifacts itself that's relative to the heritage of the community and things, but there's also archival material over there. So things that we need to keep in mind. If relocated, as previously mentioned, the museum could be staffed by an existing staff member at no additional cost to the municipality. We would simply take that staff person from the North Huron complex and move them to the location. Our staff there is cross-trained to handle a lot of different inquiries and things going on in the community. We quite often act as an information center. So it wouldn't be unusual for them to be in that position to meet people, greet people, and provide information on the community. With extended hours during the summer, we would need to look at hiring a summer student for weekdays and weekends to deal with tourists and other people interested in coming to the museum. And if there are grants out there available to help subsidize that cost. But again, contract staff would need to be hired to undertake that deaccessioning and move artifacts or create permanent exhibits. If the museum collection is focused into a new space and the current building is empty, some materials will need to be kept. Therefore, storage space at another municipal building will be required. We would have to look at, what exactly is available in our existing facilities. But if we were to put the museum in a different location and we were to do the rotational displays or exhibits and things, we're certainly going to have to house some things somewhere. There is space on the upper level of the museum that we could, the train station that could accommodate that type of thing. But depending on the magnitude or the capacity that we're able to handle at that location, we may need some additional space. Regardless of council's decisions, there will be costs associated with either the permanent closure of the museum or with moving or relocating the museum. So it's not as simple as just locking the door and walking away. Even with maintaining that building, there are costs associated with that as well. Minimal costs, but just with your hydro and heating and things, but it's still costs and associated with having that building across the street. Staff had previously prepared some closing costs, or estimated costs of closing the museum. For the previous council, it was estimated to cost approximately $107,000 based on contract staff coming in for 18 months, utility costs, moving expenses, packing and storing of the collection and appropriate materials. Just 1 second. Sorry, I got out of sequence there. So there's some estimated costs of moving the museum because you're looking at retrofitting some space and things. So going on the basis that it would be the train station, the first year being 2019, and we've just adjusted the years on this chart. So just so you know that. So it says 2019 instead of 2018 and things because of when it was prepared. But there's costs of retrofitting space, the contracted staff over a 2-year period, some moving expenses, packaging and storing of collection and appropriate materials. And that one's important because the curator for the Huron County Museum identified an issue with the storage of certain items. That they weren't being properly stored. It wasn't that they weren't being stored, it was just if they were of some kind of textile material or if they were books or whatnot, that there was a certain way that, and certain way to store them and package them. So there would be costs associated with that. The summer students' wages identified in the chart as well. Traveling exhibits, training for regular staff, utilities, and general museum expenses. And again, these are all estimated costs that were prepared back in 2017. Tonight, staff are not seeking council's direction. Again, as mentioned, the report was prepared for providing council background information for making a decision. On February 4th, our staff will be seeking council's direction as to whether or not North Huron will continue to offer a museum program or will discontinue it. A decision regarding the future of the current museum building structure itself is not required at this time. As indicated in your reports, we have received a proposal from the owner of the former train station regarding its use as a visitor center / museum. And the details are in the report, obviously, but just kind of to summarize, they've offered to transfer the ownership of the front portion of the property, because the property is quite long, to the municipality, subject to some terms and conditions on its operations over a 20-year term. And that's something that council should take into consideration. Again, the previous reports identified retail space and the cost of those retail locations and things, and this is definitely a location or site that we should consider because of the amount, or not amount, but the amount of funds that would be required to provide such a place for museum program in our community. It's probably our best option when we look at our finances.
Council, is there any questions or comments for Vicky? Like Kevin?
Through your Vicky's, the square footage for the train that you've announced, that's 3,000 square feet. Is that both floors or just the main floor?
I believe that's both floors, yes.
The garage is another 1,200 square.
Yes, it is.
The second floor is not accessible.
Pardon?
The second floor isn't accessible.
The second floor is not accessible. What staff had considered was that would be an area for basically preparing for the rotating exhibits. Staff have been through the building. And that would be kind of an area, like a staging area, to put everything together and have it prepared and ready to go as each season changed over and whatnot.
So we're probably down to 1,600 square foot display set.
I think it's about 900 square feet upstairs.
Yeah, you're at 1,800 square feet on the bottom floor.
Mm-hmm.
Then added 1,200, so you get 1,000 with the garage.
With the garage, yes.
Go ahead, Nina.
Is there ever been any consideration for, like, there was a medical display there, to be in contact with the hospital or the doctor's clinic to have a display like that over there? And like the Alice Munro in the library, or is that not a good idea, or is it not possible?
Oh, I think it's a great idea and things. Seeing the display that was, our exhibit that was across the street and things, was quite interesting and things. And I think that the hospital and the medical history is part of the culture here and the history here. And I think that we certainly could look at having it on display. Whether or not that's a rotational one, I don't know. We would have to look into that. But it could be something that could be displayed with the museum. You can choose things that you can do weddings from, for instance, and have items coming in and have people donate items or bring items in. It's for a specific time period. So say like a 6-week or 4-week time period, you could have those types of things on display. So there's nothing prohibiting us from doing something like that. I've seen antique toy displays at museums as well and things, and that's another one that could be could be done. So you could take different components over there and focus it on or different times of the year. You could even break it down into 3 municipalities that have come together to form North Huron, and if council so wished, and I'm suggesting this, is maybe they have a Wingham Day or East Wallanosh Day or Blythe Day, and if that was declared, we could focus some time on that in the museum. And things, so.
Good, Chris.
Through you, Reeve. Vicki, I was looked far down the path. Just wondering, has there been any talk about what happens at the end of the 20 years?
At the end of the 20 years, my understanding is that we would be relieved of our obligations to staff it and have it as a museum/tourism center. I think so. At that point, because that was one of the conditions that was listed, that for 20 years we operated it for that purpose. So after that 20 years, is that kind of answering your question or no?
I would just think if everything's going well, it'd be hard to, and maybe silly to change its function. If everything's going well, I was just wondering about ownership and things like that.
We would retain the ownership then. It's interesting because museums and museum programming is similar to recreational programming. And it's also similar in special events, and they all are very similar to running a business. It takes time to build up your clientele and to package and market things. And usually it takes about a 5-year time period for things to become self-sufficient and really build itself up. So it is a lot of work, but I think that it could be done.
Dwayne's going to just add a little bit to that.
So just and I think you've touched on it, but just for clarification, just in terms of, so the proposal that has been brought forward basically is that the building itself would be transferred into the ownership of the municipality. And for a 20-year time period, the municipality, one of the transfer of the ownerships would be that a condition of transfer of ownership is that it be operated as a visitor center / museum for a 20-year time period. And they would operate 365 days of the year. So I'm not sure if that's maybe clarifying. So at the end of that 20 years, as Councillor Palmer has indicated, in terms of, the anticipation, I guess, would be that it would continue on in a visitor museum fashion. But I mean, that's 20 years out, so.
I'm just wondering, with council's permission, Doug is sitting here and he's put his hand up a couple times. I know we don't usually allow the public to speak, but I think that was an important question. And Doug is willing to speak to it with your permission. I would like him to speak to it. Okay. Go ahead, Doug.
It's just, I'm in business and you don't set up an infinite agreement. So in 20 years, I'll be 80 years old. You can do with it what you want. If it's still viable as a museum, carry on, obviously. But if it's ran its course and, it's just, we're not going to make the municipality do something just because, and that's why I think there's wisdom in just saying 20 years, and then if it's good, carry on. But if it's not working and, museums have gone by the wayside, well, then I'm not going to hold the town to an agreement that it's no longer makes any sense to do. So that's where that's coming from.
So I'm going to go to, sorry, Vicki, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship. Just to add to that, to clarify the agreement, that if the municipality finds that or ceases to operate it as a museum or tourist information center in that 20-year time, the property would then go back to Mr. Kyvan.
I basically just spent a little time with John Shank talking about this, and he said, yeah, we can put a string on it to make sure. I'm not sure exactly how the string will go, but the idea is that you can't just have it for 5 years and say, oh, well, let's close it and stop operating it, and we're going to sell it or turn it into a office building for office staff. That wouldn't sit well with me and my wife,
Totally understand.
having just given it away 5 years before. So we figured 20 years is a reasonable time frame to say, okay, do it that, and after that, it's yours, like, you do with what you want.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Trevor, followed by Kevin.
So it's been mentioned a few times at this, with people, the public has brought it up, but previous council has brought it up as well, is we can't continue to operate the museum and its programming and assume that it's going to change. We can't do what we were doing before, in the building that we were doing it before, and think that, if you build it, they will come. That's not the intention. That shouldn't happen. We have to operate this tourism site and museum as a business operation, meaning market it, have people trained in it, make sure that it's functional, make sure that it's operational. All the operational stuff needs to be still worked out with staff. But the intention of it is that the council understand that, with that type of stuff, meaning training and operations and marketing and stuff, there's a cost associated to that. So, I think what we need to understand is it is going to cost us more to operate a museum than it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. We only had 300 people go through it. So, and it wasn't staffed all the time, volunteers or whatever the case may be. We can't operate the same and think it's going to just all of a sudden make us gazillions of money and everything's going to happen. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some struggle over the 5-year time frame to get us to a point where, but you know what? We get some partnerships with Huron County museums. We do that kind of stuff. There's options, but right now there isn't options because we aren't marketing it as an opportunity that the municipality can use for tourism. We aren't utilizing it to the best of its ability. Former councillor Brock Wadden was a very big proponent of this. He was a big at the fact that we have to change how we offer the program in order to make sure that it's viable for the future. And I think that still resonates with me, and I think it's been resonating with some staff as well as public. I think it is an important asset. It depends on how we market it and how we utilize it going forward, because we can move it anywhere. But if you didn't do the same thing, we're going to be all talking about here in 5 years or 2 years, and we're all going to be doing the same thing: is what is the cost of operating this museum, and are we doing anything to make it better? So I think that's the part for me, and that's where I sit at this point.
Kevin?
I agree with Councillor Sype. You covered most of the things that I was going to cover. The only other question I had about is the costing for archiving and maintaining the I'm going to take a guess here and say 10,000 square feet of items that we're not going to have in this 1,800 square foot building. Just the preservation of those alone, the cost of those alone would be equal to them being on display. Just we want to make sure that we have that in the dollar figure budget as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Chris.
Through you, brief. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but every year or so we're going to be revolving items, displays. Was that cost involved?
Yes.
It was mentioned.
Through
Okay.
your worship,
Yep.
yes.
Is that 6,500?
Yeah, something, sorry, I closed down the presentation, but, yes. And there was discussions also about bringing in items from other museums on loan to, have on display here too, again, to attract, visitors and things to come to the museum.
Did you have a question you needed? No, I thought you had your hand up. Anyone else? Questions or comments? Go ahead, Paul.
That 107,000, that's what you anticipate for moving things out of the city?
Cost, that was the cost estimates that were prepared by staff back in 2018, prior to me arriving here and things. And so they had been, council, I guess, had asked that they come up with some cost estimates and stuff. So there was some estimating done with respect to that. So some of the things that the curator at Huron County had identified, as I mentioned, was that some things weren't being stored properly and things. So there was some, there's, in those costs and things, it's going to be the purchase of proper storage containers and things like that as well. So there's a number of things that's in that slide. Would you like me to pull it back up?
No.
Good, Trevor?
I just wanted to clarify, I think what a little bit of the confusion is sometimes is we have the slide that has the closing cost of it where it says 107,000. When you go to the slide that has the 3-year time frame, that $107,000 is included in the 2019 and 20 year. So in that 2019 year of 106 and the 2020 year of 92,500, in those 2 years, 107,000 is included in the for the closing cost. I just want to make sure that is accurate. Is that correct, Vicki?
That was what was previously reported, yes.
So when we talk about $198,000 in the 2 years of 19 and 20, 107 of it is really like a one-time to move and to close the existing building today.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Through you, Ray.
Yeah.
Just as a stickler for words, for what Mr. Kuyvenhoven is requesting, number one, it says North Huron sever the property 25 feet behind the train station. You mean the garage?
No, the back of the train station, like the furthest back corner of it, whatever the minimum setback is, or rear yard is required, is where the line would be drawn. The garage that's at the back would be moved and relocated in front of that, that 25-foot setback, whatever it's going to be.
Excuse me, sorry.
So that's the plan, is to relocate the garage, join it to the train station, so you walk from the train station, same level you walk down a nice hallway into the garage. The doors there on the garage are gone, it's framed in, it's insulated, and it has a proper heating, air conditioning, and humidity control system in it as well. So that's where you add this square footage, and that building that's there moves to join the train station.
Because we talked about a possible addition and stuff like that, but I
That's
didn't
the
realize
addition.
that was going to be it.
That's the
Right.
addition, yeah. Okay. The intention is to raise the money through donations. Hopefully the Barn Dance Historical Society stepping up behind that to raise the funds. The cost, ballpark is $100,000 to move it, but we're not looking at the town having to do that, like move and completely. Right now it's just a shell, so it's got to be insulated, paper barrier, drywall, finishing, finished flooring, a whole new foundation put in as well. So that's what the cost is that we're looking at, but we're not looking to come to the taxpayers to pay for that.
Thank you. Did you want to add to that, Vicki?
No, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll give my famous speech I gave 2 minutes ago. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby received the report from the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated January 21st, 2019, regarding the North Huron Museum for information purposes. Do I have a mover? Anita and Rick, seconds. All in favor? Thank you very kindly. Moving on to Public Works and Facilities, I'm not seeing anything. Fire Department, I'm not seeing anything. Building Department, there's nothing, and we get down to property standards. that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby received a report from the Chief Building Official report dated January 21st, 2019 regarding the 2018 Property Standards and Bylaw Enforcement Agreement. And further, that the Township of North Huron hereby authorized the Reeve and Clerk on behalf of the council to sign a 12-month agreement with Keppel Creek for the purpose of providing property standards and bylaw enforcement service. And further, that the council deem the agreement to be an administrative and approves an extension to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 09/2019 to be passed at the January 21st, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? Kevin, seconder. Rick? Questions or comments from the council? Go ahead, Trevor.
Just maybe for public purpose, the chief building official could kind of go through what the agreement looks like for just for the public. Sure.
Thank you, Reeve, Billy. Just a little bit of history as well. This Valley Morris Strawberry Township North Huron entered into an agreement with Keppel Creek. Owner is Bruce Brocklebank. That agreement started in July last year and was on for a 6-month term. It is up for renewal now, and we are proposing to enter into a 1-year term, 12-month agreement. This agreement with Bruce Brocklebank is for both municipalities and for enforcement of all bylaws and property standards in each municipality. And speaking with Bruce was quite content with the existing salary and the existing compensation for mileage. Other than that, the agreement is in front of council. I don't think I need to go through every bullet or every line item in the agreement, but I'll certainly answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Can I have a show of hands? Ask for. Passes. It's approved. Child Care Department, we have nothing tonight. 7.8, CAO.
So with respect to item 7.8.1, this is respect to the appointment of fence viewers under the Line Fences Act for the municipality. Essentially, we have a provincial law that governs the arbitration process when neighbors cannot agree on the construction, the reconstruction, or maintenance of the line fence. And when those situations arise, our fence viewers assist us in terms of resolving those disputes. Historically, we've had 4 fence viewers who have fulfilled that role. We have contacted those 4 individuals. 3 of those individuals are interested in continuing on as fence viewers. However, when you do have a fence dispute, you're required to have a minimum of 3 fence viewers. So if one of those individuals was not available, basically you're in a situation you can't resolve it. So we've reached out to our neighboring municipality, Morris Turnberry. They have 3 fence viewers. Those 3 individuals are different than our 3 individuals. So the proposal, the recommendation here is essentially to appoint our 3 fence viewers that we have. However, if one of them is unavailable to deal with the dispute that arises, we would then reach out to our neighboring municipality and tap one of their fence viewers on the shoulder to be that 3rd person to assist us, and vice versa. Morris Turnberry has 3 fence viewers. If one of their individuals is unavailable, then they would contact us and we would provide one of our fence viewers to assist them. So this is, as you see, it's administrative in nature in terms of we are required to have fence viewers. So the recommendation here is to approve an exception to section 9.1 of the procedure bylaw to allow bylaw 7 of 2019 to be passed at tonight's meeting.
I'll move it.
Trevor moves it. Paul seconds. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? passes. I'll let you go on to economic development now.
Sure. Item 7.8.1, this report deals with our membership of our Economic Development Committee. For Council's information, Grant Sparling, who has been an Economic Development Committee member, has resigned from the committee for personal reasons at this time. However, he's indicated that in the future he may be interested in rejoining. He just has some personal things he needs to work through. In the meantime, Jordan Hodgins has expressed an interest in joining the committee. Jordan joined us at our last meeting, attended, and after he attended the meeting, he sent us an expression of interest to become a member of the committee. Jordan is an East Wawanosh resident, and he's also, his family owns a local business. So from an economic development perspective, certainly, merits qualifications to assist with the Economic Development Committee matters. So the recommendation here is to accept with regret the resignation of Grant, and that Council accepts the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee to appoint Jordan Hodgins to the committee. This then makes him a voting member of that committee.
Do I have a mover? Anita, and Paul seconds. Questions or comments? Go ahead.
For your group. Is there a maximum amount of members for that committee?
Yes, 12.
Well,
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? The motion passes. We'll move on now to appointment for Westario, and if you don't mind doing.
Sure. So as council is aware, Town of Wingham, we have Westario Power, and as part of our Westario arrangement or agreement with Westario, we have a seat on the board of directors. So we have a North Huron representative who sits on the board of directors for Westario. That individual has been Bart Cameron. Bart has been our representative on that board for a few years. So as part of our new council needs to decide in terms of who you wish to have as your representative on the Westario board. As directed by the previous council, with this council, we advertised for that vacancy, and Bart has put his name forward. He's interested in continuing on as a representative on that board of directors. He has experience, he's sat on the board, he has the history. So the recommendation here is, if council so wishes, to appoint Bart Cameron to the position as a municipal representative on the Westario Power Board of Directors for the 2019 to 2022 term of council.
Do I have a mover? Chris, seconder, Trevor. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. I'm going to go to staff report now. And I'll read it out for you, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby received the report of the CEO clerk dated January 21st, 2019 regarding cannabis retail stores in the Township of North Huron for the information purposes. And further, that the Corporation of the Township of North Huron pass a motion permitting the licensing of cannabis retail locations within its jurisdictions. And further, that staff be authorized to notify the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, AGCO, regarding council's decision. Do I have a mover? Trevor?
I'll move for discussion purposes.
Anita? Okay, then I'm opening it up to conversation. Any questions or concerns or comments? Sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I still feel that this is a very bad idea. I've read and heard some fellow comments and, grab the money and run. It's not going to happen in the next while anyways. And, that's not the right answer, because it may happen and, you're just playing with the devil, I feel. yeah, you could call me an auntie back in 1920 when the Prohibition was around, but it was Pandora's box. And as 100 years later, we know the results of opening that box. And it's ruining families, costing a lot of money for everybody's society. And this thing, pot, it's a gateway. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. And the feds are trying to push that idea, but it's not. I know many individuals, this is from the Teen Ranch people, the kids that have had lots of trouble, and every one of them said, I started with pot and moved on. So it's a gateway. And so it's part of Pandora's box. Look at the cost that there's going to be. We don't know the policing. We don't have no idea how that's going to go. So this $10,000 that we might get, we still don't know if county grabs half of it or not. But anyways, up to 10 grand possibly. Is OPP going to wrap it or take it from us? I bet you it'll take a bunch of it. And we've got 3 schools just up the road. The rules are, 150 meters, 120 meters, so it's 300 feet. That's nothing, that's diddly. And we have no decision matters. We cannot decide where a retail would go. Some committee in Toronto figures that out for us, and for any community. And we have no idea. They want to make this thing thrive, or it makes them look silly. So it's going to be in a good prime location. You can just bet that wherever it goes. And it just bothers the heck out of me. I know you could say, well, the people that want to use it are just going to go to Teeswater or Clinton or wherever, possibly, if they accept it. So let them go. Let them work for it. As far as pot being, they tell you it's going to be cheaper. No, it's not, because the bad guys are just going to lower their price. That's economics for you. And so it is a huge bother. And don't think you're alone, because Blue Water has said no. Mississauga says no. Oakville says no. Markham says no. Those 3 are huge cities. So, we wouldn't be alone by saying no. And I think it'd be just more socially acceptable saying no to this. It's Pandora's box.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, my concern is the rest in our youth and not care in front of us. I just don't understand that.
Okay.
With money.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Paul.
The social system was just mentioned there, just what are the costs going to be? And as of this afternoon, there's 236 in and 68 have voted out. They don't want anything to do with it. You mentioned some of those names there. So that's 304 reported in. There's another, 444 places, right? So what happens tonight, a lot of them have to make a decision. I feel it was pushed on us in 32 days over Christmas time. And we saw from our sergeant who was in here last week, there's a lot of questions out there. I feel there's people voted out of it for a reason. And that's why I'm going with that, because I feel a lot of my constituents, I was talking to them and they don't want it. On the majority of them, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Paul. Other questions or concerns? Seeing none, I call the vote.
Oh, ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote, please. Just give a minute. Just give us a minute. We'll show you down. Go ahead, Trevor, while she's doing.
So I just want to make sure that we're all clear that the motion on the table is that the motion is to permit.
Yeah.
So, okay, I just want to make sure that we're all clear on what the motion is. So when we vote, we understand what the motion is.
Deputy Reed?
No.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Hopper,
No.
Counselor McBurney,
No.
Counselor Palmer,
No.
Counselor Van Gibson.
Yes.
Yes. And the motion has failed. We move on. North Huron will not have a pot store. Moving to correspondence, I don't see any. Moving on to council reports, the Reeve activity report. A few things, it's been a busy couple of weeks. First of all, we were, Kevin and I and Dwayne were down to London to see a presentation by the president of Bruce Power. And it was very interesting. We sat there, we got the table with Morris Turnberry, and it was quite interesting and quite informative. And it's amazing what they're doing. They're looking at it was a 20 to 40 year expansion. And I'm not going to go on and on about it because it'll be a long night then. But the one thing I really noticed was when they put the map up and they talked about 500 companies that have got 20-year contracts with them and they can build and hire people on for it, et cetera, et cetera. They talked about the housing development along the lake and up Georgian Bay. But maybe Kevin will want to speak to this too. All of a sudden what we started to notice is there's this green where they were growing and all the people they're helping, Mississauga, Owen Sound, Toronto, Niagara Falls, all these places, but it just went right around in a circle, right around North Huron and Morris Turnberry, and I believe it was East Huron. Somehow we missed out on it. We haven't missed out completely. But it tells us that we need to get our act together. They talked about housing shortage. They can't get enough people to work there. And I've heard this from the county and several places that I've been to now. It's really surprised me. I thought there was no jobs in the area. It's not jobs. It's where do we house the people once we've hired them? They're all coming from different London, Kitchener, whatever. So the housing is a big thing, but the small industry, it's amazing how much small industry that they create and that they help. It's just totally amazing. But what caught my eye the most is it's going right around us. We're not getting any action out of this growth. Growth to North Huron means stabilized taxes. It means more volunteers. It means a better lifestyle. It means using our facilities more. So this council is committed to, we've talked about it, we've committed ourselves to looking into those issues and those situations, but I thought I'd bring that up. I was at a hospital meeting too with the mayors of, different mayors were invited to the Wingham Hospital. And it's amazing, they had, I think it was 3 more doctors they brought in shortly, and they have a couple more that are going to be retired. And they're right on top of it in the facility and the new building, the old school that we renovated is pretty well fully used now. They're moving along good. They are in very good shape. And again, it was an interesting day to chat with the other mayors and leads of the area. The future program, which I'm the county representative for them, it's amazing because I think it was 2 different times I met with them, one with their executive and the other one just with a demonstration they were doing. Again, going back to there is not any houses. There's no place to build. So we really need to look at our Hutton Heights. We need to look at our A2A or A1A, whatever it's called up there. We need to get this stuff rolling because now is the opportune time. We need to take advantage of it. I was working over in Godrich. I was called into a new subdivision just outside of Godrich. And way back in by the lake, they got to be putting 500 houses up. It was just amazing. I'm like, you don't even see this from the highway. We're missing this opportunity that will stabilize our taxes. So as a group, I know we're all working towards that. Again, it just kept boiling back to the lack of housing. And this is our opportunity to shine. And I wish you all could have been there because the Bruce Power was really an eye-opening session to go to. And if it comes along again, I would recommend everybody go to it. That's the Reeves report. We light this thing up again.
I'd like to comment, sir.
Yeah, oh, sorry, any questions? Yes, sorry.
Just so you got, when you mentioned my name, you got my mind working. I think from what I gathered from that meeting with the Bruce Power. Everyone seemed to beat us to the table to be at that discussion, to be on their boards or be on their decision-making queue. I can see that closer places like Kincardine and that way being physically attached and being more ear to the ground on anything that's going up there. I do agree with you, and I would like to see us take a real good stab at just getting on some of that talking points and being at their table. I think that's the only way that we're going to get that. I agree with that circle. When you looked at that map, it was almost taken aback by how there's just a borderline, just above Teeswater, or just Huron, North Huron just doesn't have anything. There's just dozens around us, and that the only thing I think of is just that we're not there talking to them, and they don't know us, and we don't know them. I don't know how we do that. I'll go about that. Whether that's more on a staffing CIO level, finding who to talk to. I don't know how I would find out that.
Just to follow up on that, I did talk to Murray Simpson today, who's head of our Economic Development Committee, and we had this conversation, and Dwayne and him and I will be following up on it. Surprised me. So no, we are on top of that one, and we're going to see what we can do, because you're absolutely right. If you have no connections, you're not going to go anywhere. But if you make that first connection, will lead to a second connection, will lead to a third connection. So yes, we do need to make that. Any other questions or comments about what I said? Moving on, then, I will have the counselors speak to any reports of what they've been doing and what they've been up to. Go ahead, Ken.
I was at the last Blythe Business Improvement meeting. There really isn't anything new to report as far as them moving forward with any of their projects. They are in the midst of finalizing their budget as well, but they're also, I guess this for the general audience, they're also looking for, are requesting other people to come members of their board. They are looking at replacing some staff that have moved on. So they're openly searching for new members. That's all I have.
Can I just comment on that for a second? You guys are going to have your annual meeting, and I believe you're going to have your annual meeting for the Blythe BA and the Wingham BIA in February. Is there any consideration given by the, and I don't know what's happened in the past, for the council to be at the general meeting just to get to know the business people? Could you bring that up?
I'm sure with the, I can speak for the Blythe BIA, that there's open invitation to any of the meetings for all of our councillors to come out if you have any concerns, because a lot of the stuff that they talk about just concerning the Blythe area stretches out to encompass businesses and farm stores and everything in the area that they would absolutely love to work with.
I'm just not sure if the general meetings are ticketed though, like you have to have a meal ticket, or I'm not sure. And Trevor, maybe you could speak to that too.
No, the fact that those general meetings are open to the public. They're open to the public. Obviously, you wouldn't have a vote, but you can go and you can look at what's going on in the BIA. It's an open meeting. There's no reason why the councillors or any person from the public could go to those meetings for any particular reason. So, similar to the same thing as what Kevin was saying is the Wingham BIA is they had drafted a 2019 budget. They have not. Their annual general meeting is late in February. I think it's February 21st. So they'll be tabling that to the membership. 2018, they ended up having a surplus, so they've got some stuff that they're going to be getting to continue to save for with regards to projects that they've got going on. So it's an interesting time for the Wingham BIA as with all the transition. They've had some turnover of staff as well, but they've also had some new blood come in, so that they will be hopefully being elected at their annual general meeting, and I'm glad I could provide information to council for council's purposes at that meeting, because there was lots of discussion about the museum and just where we are at with regards to budget and that type of stuff. That I made it quite aware to them, so that what progress we are making, so that they can be informed, and the business community can be informed. The business community was also provided information with regards to the community the community improvement plan. So that was there wasn't as many people as I think was intended, but there has been some, obviously, getting back in the framework after the holiday season. It's hard, but I think there has been at least some information presented to the BIA. It's on the BIA website. It's linked to the North Huron website, so the information's available. If it's up to the people and the business owners to take advantage of that information. So it's been presented.
So just for clarification, we do have representation at both BIA, so I wasn't for a minute thinking everybody had to go every BIA meeting. I was just thinking when they're electing their officials, it would be nice if the councilors had time that night. I know we're all busy. If we knew ahead of time, because we all, what the schedule turns out. I had next week off, and now we got 5 meetings already. So if we could know ahead of time when the general meeting is and where it is, so that if any councilor, we could talk amongst ourselves as if we'd like to sit down at a table. Because I wasn't sure where I was going with that. I wasn't sure if it was a $25 a plate meeting or something. Because if it is, just so we know ahead of time. Okay, so if you two guys could follow up and give us information on that and bring it to our attention so it doesn't slip by us.
Will do.
Thank you kindly. Any other, go ahead, Chris.
Just a little future information. There were several of us going to energy breakfast on Friday and an Ministry of Housing meeting on Saturday. So we'll be meeting with the relevant ministers, and we'll be bubbling with information for the next meeting.
For sure. Never enough information. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, I was at the Allison Monroe meeting, and they're just coming up with the weekend that they're having May 25th. And I think that's a Saturday. On the 24th, they're going to the local schools here with authors. So they're going to Hastio in this area overnight. And then they're coming back here on all day Saturday in Wingham. They had 4 talks in the thing where they get the poets going, whatever, and readings, and they're sold out completely last year. So this year they're going with 6, and they're all concerned about the theater up there, that it's way too big. It doesn't, I said, wait, give it time. It'll be ready for them. I'll guarantee you that. And the other, that's the schools on the Friday, and then they're here all day Saturday, and then they move down on Sunday down to Bayfield, and they're looking over there. And then on the town hall board, well, Mr. Kyvenova talked a little bit about it, but he spent they have $33,000 in their fund that he had that they organized. They're very happy with the green room that you gave them, I think, the last council time, and then they're getting a multimedia projector, and Stapleton's going to be putting in, instead of where the carpet is, they're putting in tile, and he's very excited about it, and he's getting lots of people there to do some work, and it's a real plus for the town hall, I'm sure of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or concerns from council? Okay. Next on the agenda is Reed Bailey's motion. At this point in time, because I want to make the motion, I'm going to step down. I'm going to have Trevor take my place. I'd like to speak to this one.
Go ahead, Reed Bailey.
I'd like to make a motion that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby direct staff to prepare a report regarding possible changes from Reeve to mayor and deputy Reeve to deputy mayor. And I'd like to put that motion forward.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Faulkner seconds. Okay. Is there any discussion? Reed Bailey, I believe you wanted to speak to it. provide some information with regards to it?
If you, I'll start off if you don't mind. So I have nothing against being the Reeve, nothing at all. My mother was Deputy Reeve, and I think we all understand how much I love my mother and my father, God rest his soul. But what it is, when I was canvassing, I would quite often be asked, what's a Reeve? And I said, it's a mayor. And they'd say, well, why don't you call yourself the mayor then? And I said, well, I don't. We'll have to look into it. When I was at the Bruce Power, and here we're dealing with, we want to build and move forward. Nancy Mickey had set it up for us to go down. She was so kind to let us know what was going on, set us down. And Kevin here handed me my name tag, and I put it on. And everybody, well, who are you? And I'd shake their hand and say, I'm Bernie Bailey. I'm the Reeve of North Huron. Finally, somebody tapped me on the chest and said, actually, you're the mayor. When we're dealing with bigger companies and we want to move forward and we want to work on things, they called me the mayor. I didn't do that. One of the meetings we're going to either Friday or Saturday, I said I would go to it. I have information back that Mayor Bailey, thank you for coming out. That's with, I believe, with Steve Clark. It's not about getting rid of the past. Anybody here knows I'm not about, I love the past. The past is your future and will lead you where you want to go. It's about moving on. It's about meeting with the Bruce Power and the honorable this and the honorable that, and propelling forward the idea of being the mayor. Only because I believe that it propels more of a moving forward society. So that when we want to put the housing and development in, and I'm going to go before certain ministers and I'm going to sit down with them and I'm going to be asking for funding. That's my plan anyway. When I was on council before, I went to different meetings and we discussed, and they asked who the mayor was, and I said, well, we have a Reeve. Again, it's not because I'm proud to be a Reeve. Make no bones about that. I'm proud to be the Reeve. But I did make a commitment to the people that elected me that I would move this town forward. I would try everything in my power to move it forward, to reduce the taxes, to not spend all our time cut. Going back to whether if you wanted to have a mayor and a Reeve, or there's several other obligations. I do know from East Wawanosh's point of view, you guys always had a Reeve. Again, my mother was a Deputy Reeve of Wingham. I have no problem with that. I'm just thinking moving forward. As we've talked about different things we're talking about, I believe this is one of the tiny little steps that may help us evolve a little faster. And that's why I'm putting this motion forward. And I'll let it sit there.
Yes, Councillor Van Peterson.
Through you, I think being a Reeve is celebrating your rural roots, and if people like ministers don't know that, then is that a sort of lack of in their education, because you are still the head of council. It's North Huron is a rural community, and it is a great conversation starter if they ask, a Reeve, are you a Reeve? What is a Reeve? And then you say it's the same as a mayor. I'm the head of the council. I'm just from rural. We have a beautiful historical village, Blythe. There is the great agricultural and beautiful nature in East Wawanosh. Then we have the great town of Wingham with all the amenities over there. I think it's a great conversation starter to promote North Huron. And if it's a mayor or a Reeve, I think the Reeve is just a little bit more back to our roots.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. There's history here. I was told about this from a constituent the other night. At amalgamation time, Wingham had a mayor, Blythe had a mayor, and like you said, East Wawanosh had a Reeve. So when we all came together, kicking and screaming in some cases, the powers to be decided to, okay, let's help East Wawanosh, make them feel part of the group. So that's why they chose Reeve back then, and it's stuck ever since. I agree with you, Anita, in a lot of ways, and I agree with you, Reeve Bailey, that there's I'll call it an ignorance out there of the larger municipalities, which are all mayors, because that just seems to be the way that they go, and the companies that they maybe question it, but it is a conversation starter. I think with the, what is it, the Municipal Act, Reeve and mayor interchangeable. How much will it cost to make a change? That's a big question.
So I just want to clarify for council's perspective. So there's to be no decision of this. The motion is really just to direct staff to prepare a report. So the report will come back to council with all of that information, history of why it was determined of that, what the cost would be in order to change it, how we change it, what all that relates to. So I just want to make it clear that the motion is to have the staff prepare a report, no different than any other motion that we need to get staff to do. And then if that motion is passed, as it's on the table today, then staff would bring back a report. We would then discuss it more, and then the motion, and then an approval or denial of that motion would happen at that point. So good questions, Councillor Palmer. I just want to make sure we're clear on what the motion is tonight, and it's more just to get the council's report. So more from the comment. If there's any comments with regards to the actual thing, we'll go from there. Councillor Faulkner.
Yeah, I'd just like to add 2-3 to the conversation. The Reeve versus mayor. I've started seeing what Reeve Bailey is seeing in some of the meetings. I have to condone that he's correct in that. When we are under a Reeve designation is giving people talking points for the rule, and that's the way it's perceived. It's more like being a assistant something. I'm just talking about when we're dealing with Bruce Power, we're dealing with trying to bring infrastructure here. They only see us as that when they're in the room talking amongst themselves. I'm just going by my own personal observation, and I think that if we just keep doing things the same way, we're going to get the same result. And I'm a proponent for moving forward and trying to get new results for our township.
Okay. Van Henderson?
I am all for moving forward, but I don't want to be overtaken by city rules and city ideas. That's just what I think it's important, that we have to realize that we are rural and we are proud of that.
I don't think there's any question about that. I think so what if there's anything, is there anything else that anybody wants to comment with regards to the motion? I will make sure I read the motion before we vote, just so everybody's clear. So the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to prepare a report regarding the possible title changes from Reeve to mayor and deputy Reeve to deputy mayor. I got moved by Reeve Bailey, and it was seconded by Councillor Faulkner. So I will call the vote. All those in favor? Carried.
To get the report.
To get the report. Yep. That is right. At this point, I'll ask Reeve Bailey to come back to the chair.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. Okay. 9.3 is comments by members. Any comments? Number 10 is notice of motion. Would anybody like to put a notice of motion on the table? Trevor?
So Reeve, just so clarity, notice of motion would have to be presented prior to the agenda being published, and then it would be discussed at the next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder. So we're going to go into number 11 then, the bylaws. I'm going to hand it over to Dwayne.
So just in terms of 11.1 is bylaw 5 of 2019. And this is a bylaw to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement of purchase and sale between the Township of North Huron and the Municipality of Central Huron and Heather Louise Bell. So bylaw number 5 of 2019 being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement of purchase and sale between the Corporation Township of North Huron and the Corporation Municipality of Central Huron and Heather Louise Bell for a portion of land legally described as Part Lot 27, Concession 14, call it, as in R2 80619 ST and TW R280619 ST R48390 in the Municipality of Central Huron be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, be signed by the Reeve clerk and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover?
I will move it.
Trevor Sipes moves, seconder. Anina, you second it. Questions? I don't think there's questions or comments. Questions or comments? I think we all understand what this one's about. I call the vote. Passes. Thank you.
Item 11.2, bylaw 6 of 2019. This is a bylaw to adopt a mild device usage policy, which was discussed at the previous council. Bylaw number 6 of 2019 being a bylaw to adopt a mobile device usage policy, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be grossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover? Paul, seconder Rick. Questions or comments? None seen. All in favor? Passes.
Item 11.3 is bylaw 7 of 2019, and this is a bylaw to appoint fence viewers for the Corporation Township of North Huron. So bylaw number 7 of 2019, a bylaw to appoint fence viewers for the Corporate Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, be signed by the Reeve clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover? Anita and Kevin. Seconds. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes.
Item 11.4 is bylaw 8 of 2019, and this is a bylaw to establish remuneration expenses of members of council and to repeal bylaw 36 of 2018. So bylaw number 8 of 2019 being a bylaw to establish remuneration expenses of members of council and to repeal bylaw 36 of 2018. Be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be grossed in the bylaw book.
Would somebody like to move that? Kevin, seconder. Chris. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes.
Item 11.5, bylaw 9 of 2019. This is a bylaw to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of council a service agreement for property standards bylaw enforcement officer between the Township of North Huron, Municipality of Morris Turnberry, and Kemple Creek, otherwise known as Bruce Brocklebank. This bylaw reads, bylaw 9 of 2019 being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of council a service agreement for property standards bylaw enforcement officer between the Township of North Huron, Municipality of Morris Turnberry, and Kemple Creek, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover? Paul, seconder. Nina. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes. Thank you. So we have announcements here. The next budget meeting will be held on Wednesday, January 23rd, 6 p.m. at the North Huron Council Chambers. North Huron Police Services Board will be meeting on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019 at 7 p.m. at these council chambers. Special meeting of the council will be held on Wednesday, January 30th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Blythe Memorial Hall. This is a one-item agenda, future relocation of the Blythe Fire Services. Then we have next regular council meeting will be held Monday, February 4th, 2019 at 6 o'clock at the North Huron Chambers. That's just for information purposes. Other business, I'm not seeing any on here. Closed session, that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceed at 7:30 PM to an in-camera session closed to public to discuss the following: a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, administration personnel. Do I have a mover? Anita? And Trevor, seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Passed, sorry, me. To pass first now, thank you. We adjourn for a 5-minute adjournment.